So I think of culture as the collective personality of your team. And so as I think about our culture, you say you can't measure it in numbers. I'd actually disagree.
Oh, okay.
And so I think numbers are at the heart of your culture. I've never worked for an organization that is shipping and innovating its product as quickly as AlphaSense right now. The overlap I get with New York of several hours of my day and the context that I'm able to gather from our executive team to product roadmap to the competitive landscape.
Welcome back to the TFC Business Show. I'm your host, Reggie, aka your Chief Financial Coconut. And today I am doing another episode with the team at AlphaSense to talk a little bit about talent, hybrid work, and all the good jazz, because as with all business owners, you are thinking about where can I hire? What is my strat for the next, few months, all the way to like 2-3 year long-term plan. And talent is an integral part of growing any business, right? And I can say that for sure that it's actually very, very competitive, very hard to hire. So I am glad to be joined with Daniel. For our audience that don't know you, could you just give a quick introduction of who you are and all that good stuff?
Awesome. Thank you, Reggie. Great to be here. So my name is Daniel Sanchez-Grant and I lead the international corporate business for AlphaSense. For those of you that don't know, AlphaSense is an AI-powered market intelligence platform that supports people across every industry of the economy make important decisions about their business, whether it's their competitive landscape, macroeconomy trends, deep diving into specific companies. We're running an AI layer over really high quality business content. I guess my background, I spent 6 years at LinkedIn, starting in early 2011 and leaving at the end of 2016, just after the Microsoft acquisition. And so that was 6 transformational years of going from private to public to acquired. I did a 4-year stint at Envision, another hyper-growth company, raised over 300 million in funding, fully remote with 1,000 employees around the world. And over the last 2 years, I've had the pleasure of being at AlphaSense. So yeah, great to meet you.
Nice. So in that sense, you strongly believe in this like remote type of thing, right? I mean, you've done it before, right? So and I think the backdrop why I'm bringing that up is because these days, a lot of companies are saying, come back to the office, right? Some guy dropped a sink at the lobby, right? So, right? So it's like, come back, or get out, right? So that's like the backdrop of, post-COVID, come back to office thing, but you've done it multiple times, with the international remote team.
Yeah.
So what is that thought process, in terms of, can this work? How does this work and all that good stuff?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I would say COVID, a lot of organizations just had to respond. There wasn't a choice. And so to a certain degree, if I think about my Envision experience, Envision was born as a fully remote company. We grew to 1,000 employees around the world, where that was built into the fabric of the culture, the people that we hired, the way we interacted with each other. And that was pre-COVID. And to a certain degree, it was interesting to experience what the world had to respond to in that moment. Evidently a really, really difficult time. But from a business point of view, accelerated a lot of transformation in ways of working, in technology. And so experiencing that and seeing where we are today, I think there's a recalibration happening. I think companies were forced into that scenario. And like any good organization, will always be looking at its mission, its culture, its competitive landscape, and be trying to respond to those things with the most up-to-date modern talent strategies that are reflective of the business that they're in and the culture. At AlphaSense, in the market that we exist in, we want to hire ambitious, passionate, deeply customer-centric people who are curious about the problem that we solve. Our buyers are sophisticated strategy professionals across every industry of the economy. They're following macro trends, getting into micro details. And so the types of people we hire have to be deeply curious, passionate about the customer, care about the problem that we solve. And so to compete in that landscape for us in this context, we believe flexible working is critical for the types of people that we want to bring into AlphaSense.
Okay, great. So a lot of keywords, right? Which I don't dispute, right? Yeah. But how do you then translate that into evaluating the people that you bring to the team, right? Because every team says, "Oh, we want curious people. We want people that are like, ready to, get things done, make magic work, and all the good stuff, right? Everyone wants that.
Yeah.
But from a hiring standpoint or from like a evaluation standpoint, that's where things get a little bit like, how do I know, right? These people fit the company culture. Like, what are some controls or some juicy insights you can give us? Like, okay, actually, we evaluated people using our own AI model. So we scrape their data. I don't know. What do you do? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question. We've done a lot of work to get really clear on what makes great at AlphaSense. And so if you think of the nature of our work, we're providing high quality market research to some of the world's leading companies across financial services, life sciences, the energy industry, in every geography and economy around the world. And so research by nature of what it is that we do and the value that we create, when we're thinking about the candidate profile and curiosity, how much research have they done prior to a conversation? How do they demonstrate it with a deep understanding of the buyer that we work with, of the problems that they face? We're very fortunate in that we've got a huge case study portfolio of companies that we're partnering, from the competitive intelligence team at Salesforce to various investment banks around the world. It's not hard for someone to turn up to an interview and demonstrate that type of passion for what we do and that they've understood it. And so I'd say research and preparation, how do they demonstrate that at every stage of the process, would just be one example of that.
Okay, great. So maybe we can highlight a little bit on the mission portion, right?
Yeah.
Because, maybe someone listening in is like, oh yeah, actually this company that I could join, right? So tell me a little bit on that mission part of like what you guys are trying to do, and how does that inform the talent mix, right? In that sense.
Yeah. I mean, for us, the vision is to put AlphaSense on the device of every knowledge worker in the world.
How far are you from that?
We've got some work to do.
Okay.
And what that means is when people in business are trying to make really business critical decisions about where they invest or what markets they go into, the products that they launch, they're looking for really high quality information. And so from our point of view, the mission is, how do we give these types of professionals access to the highest quality information, a diverse range of perspectives, whether it's a perspective from the company, sell-side research, whether it's expert interviews and what we're doing in that space, which is really interesting, a really diverse point of view on a market or a company, so that the types of people looking to do due diligence and stay up to date in this rapidly evolving kind of macro economy that we're in, can turn to AlphaSense and have one place for lots of siloed information sets and get to key insights quickly. So that's the kind of mission and value, and that drives a lot of how we think about the types of people that we need to hire.
Yeah, I can envision people that will get very excited just hearing that, like the research buffs, like they really want to look at all these things, right? So we'll get there later, right? Like, but I think drawing on from the previous episode that we did with you guys, for our audience, if you have not checked out the first episode, you should. Then you get a better idea, what AlphaSense is doing and all the good stuff that they're trying to pursue, right? So bringing to talent once again, right? Let's talk a little bit about this remote, hybrid, and like back in office thing, which we kind of brought up in the front of the discussion, right? So do you have a house view on this? Because, just now it was like, okay, there are all these things that we're trying to do, but what's the house view? What does AlphaSense want?
Ultimately, we want the best talent. And so for us, what that means is looking for people that, again, understand the problem, care about what we do. And to do that, we have got a kind of flexible model. We've got key locations around the world, a beautiful office in London, right in the kind of center of the city that we moved into a year ago. We in Singapore were 30 people by the end of 2024, only having launched the entity like a year and a half ago. And now we're up to over 70 people in a Singapore office here locally.
Do they have a nice office too?
It's absolutely beautiful.
Okay. Yeah. Yes.
So we believe in having space for our people. We're an early stage company, and being face-to-face when you're growing this quickly adds real advantages to us. The learning, the best practices, the constant evolution in our product roadmap. I've never worked for an organization that is shipping and innovating its product as quickly as AlphaSense right now. all of our new generative AI capabilities and giving customers the ability to synthesize, billions of pieces of data to triangulate on the key insight that they need, the product roadmap is incredible right now. But what that means as a go-to-market team is how do we quickly train and enable and get every single one of our client professionals really deeply an expert in the vertical, the personas that we work with. And to do that, we believe that some in-office experience is a key part of learning, sharing, building culture. But it's got to be balanced. People want flexibility. And in a global environment where I'm operating across a US time zone, where our executive leadership team are, I'm in London, I've got a team in Singapore, the ability to work across geographies and time zones and cultures and make sure that as you're innovating, building, you can distill down key messages, keep people aligned. So we do have offices in our key locations. Those locations are driven by where we want to be with our customers and the opportunity that we see in key markets. And then around that is a flexible culture where we try and create the space for people to do their best work where they need it.
Okay. So in that sense, you guys are flexible, kind of hybrid, right? And from your work experience so far, having run many different teams, what is the productivity challenge? Because ultimately, most team leaders will look at it as like, okay, you can work anywhere, if you can produce, and make magic and do the thing that you need to do. So the baseline challenge today for a lot of teams is still like, okay, if I give you that remote work, can you achieve, can you, do what you need to do, right? So is that productivity sacrifices, and do you then factor that into your hiring? You know where I'm going with this?
Totally, yeah. I don't believe there's a one size fits all as it comes to a decision like this. I think even within an organization, if you think about the levels of experience, the roles, the goals, the key objectives of a function that you build and design, I'm not sure everyone is created with the same dynamics. And so I think there's a degree of flexibility that even within an organization needs to be created. I'll give you an example. In our kind of earlier career client professionals, these are the people that are responsible for taking the value of AlphaSense to customers for the very first time, whether that's through social media, calling. This is an earlier career profile of people that we have kind of two objectives for. One objective is go fill our pipeline with great conversations from customers that are deeply kind of trying to solve the problem that we care about. And we've done a bunch of work around what that is and who they are. So we train them on that. And it's go get us loads of those conversations. The second objective for those people, we call them SDRs, sales development representatives, is to be the talent pipeline for AlphaSense. We're hiring bright, hungry, motivated, passionate people that want to go and build a great career for themselves in the business. And so we put in place training plans and enablement and practices outside of their core work to give these people the skills, the knowledge, the perspective that will make them relevant for much broader roles and careers across our business. And so in that example, we want those individuals in at least 3 days a week. We find that the networking, the shared learning, the training, the collaboration enables us to accelerate their productivity. Now, that's not for everyone, but to a certain degree, AlphaSense isn't for everyone. We're a really ambitious company, very motivated, huge goals. It requires a certain type of person that, again, is passionate about the problem, wants to work in high growth, cares about the customer that we serve. And when we find those people, they excel. But again, it won't be for everyone.
Yeah. High growth means work over time. Means you gotta grind, right? Yeah. But as with all growth sector, you're trying to run.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's just a function of any business in its cycles, right? So if you don't really want to run, there are many big MNCs that are a little slower. So not saying you're slow, but you know, it's all relative, right? So just so I'm very clear, right? Essentially, what you're saying is that people that are doing like what we would commonly call BAU, business as usual, day-to-day functions, you know, getting all the lead generation, getting that normal processes running. These people can be remote, by all means, because they're just kind of like part of the function. They're just doing what they're doing, right? And then there's another pool of people that are more collaborative, more like problem solving innovating. These people need more face time together. Is that kind of what I'm hearing in terms of your grand scheme of thought?
Yeah, there's definitely not a one size fits all
Of course,
approach.
yeah.
So we try and tailor it, but the value of in person for us is huge at this stage of growth where you're innovating so quickly. The face time is key, and so flexibility, remote working, technology, trust, hiring people that are ambitious and irrespective of where they're located, want to come to AlphaSense and have real impact. That's key. And I think that trust is just built into the leadership and the fabric of the company. But at the same time, investing in those real-time moments, training, enablement, things that actually being together in real life builds chemistry and culture. And so I think that balance is important.
Then how do you structure senior leadership then? Right? Because this company is from the US and you're in the UK, and then there's Singapore office, and Singapore office is supposed to do the whole of Asia.
Yeah.
And you're not the only company that's structuring this way, right?
Yeah.
There are many companies that are in different countries, and there's always this pool of decision makers that are kind of moving around, but they have a base.
Yeah.
Right? So how does senior management kind of put themselves together in terms of where they locate, how does this thing work, and all that stuff?
Yeah, I've had a couple of different experiences with it. Envision, my APAC business was centered out of Sydney as a hub. Here we're Singapore. At AlphaSense, our executive leadership team is based in New York. And so I report into the president and CRO, and I have the APAC country manager into me. And to a certain degree, what that creates is a really nice alignment for us. If you think about the overlap I get with New York of several hours of my day and the context that I'm able to gather from our executive team to product roadmap to the competitive landscape, that enables me to pass the same context back to my APAC business where I get my mornings overlap, and we get at least a couple of hours in the morning to be ensuring there's alignment operationally across what we're doing from headquarters to what we're doing in satellite regional offices like London and Singapore. So I'm finding that working really well here. The context, the collaboration, the alignment, the asynchronous working and technology we put in place. This is possibly one of the best setups I've actually experienced on that
Really?
front. Yeah.
Okay. What made you say that it's one of the best, right? Because you're saying okay, we're running, we're developing new products, with updating our market strategy, changing certain things on the fly, right?
Yeah.
So it's quite synonymous with high growth companies.
Yeah.
Right? And running a remote team myself, sometimes I find it very difficult to translate that. Okay, we have new information now from the market. We need to make some changes.
Yeah.
And then translate that to the team, right? How does that kind of look like in terms of, efficiency and effectiveness?
Yeah. I think there's a few dimensions to it. If we take product, for example, how do you take a US product and make it relevant to different geographies around the world? The feedback loop that you need from the customer voice to the go-to-market team, into product, into marketing, that cross-functional alignment becomes critical. And then you're layering in not just the complexity of siloed teams, but different geographies and time zones. And so one of the things, again, that I've just been really sort of proud about, and big factor, I think, to the success that we're seeing over here in Singapore, just how quick that feedback loop is. As simple as, product channels in Slack, where every day we're getting insights. One of the teams of people we have in our Singapore business, they're called product specialists. And these individuals have deep expertise into the workflows that each vertical, from mining to financial services, deeply verticalized in their sort of training and understanding of the persona in their industry, but also really bring to life the product for those users in a way that makes sense in their context. But they're learning so much constantly about gaps in content or feedback loops on product workflow. And that Slack channel, just as a continuous update, I log in every day and there's 10 new things that we're getting from the field, and products responding to every single one, categorizing them in their own workflows and feeding that back into what we launch into market. And so I think that feedback loop of how a product specialist talking to a customer can go from customer to product and respond in some of the fastest times I've seen is, again, a kind of testament to the culture but also the ability to use technology across time zones and ensure that we're working cross-functionally to solve some of these problems.
So, I mean, we all use these communication channels, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, and to be fair, I don't think everyone is as responsive, but I know what you're saying, right? Like, it's actually getting a loop, right? And people will kind of dump information in a Slack channel, and then you can process it and see and make some decisions, right? How often do you then do like meetings with them, like to just make sure you sum up and, are clear about these feedback loops?
Yeah, I think this week is a great example. And so every quarter, at
Because
least
you're here
once,
for a few days.
Exactly. At least once a quarter, I'm in Singapore. And part of the focus in a moment like this is what we call our quarterly business review cycle. And so this is an opportunity for me to bring the go-to-market team together around a look back on what's just happened and a look forward to what we're going to do. And part of the framework around that QBR is asks of the business. And so every single client partner has their asks, which I'm able to clarify and work through. And then we have a kind of centralized way of capturing that so that our central New York team have got every single ask across every single client partner across the business. We call them account executives. And so something like that enables me in the field to clarify and understand the context and really break down what is it that we're hearing from either the customer or our product team, and then take that and synthesize it into my own takeaway with our executive leadership team, where I'm able to see trends and connect the dots and ask and partner with product on how they can innovate and solve new ways of helping our clients.
Do you have certain like leading questions that you go with in terms of trying to ask? Because I mean, I'm very incentivized in trying to learn more about these like hybrid management teams. You know, like how do you manage a team that is like, you don't sit with them every day, you meet them once a quarter, right? So like this whole thing, how do you do it, right? So maybe give me a little bit more color when you say like, okay, you synthesize the information and then like ask whatever questions that you need to ask. How do you kind of think about it? Probably like a framework of thought, right?
Yeah. I would say the first is what's happening week to week. These quarterly reviews that I do are about relationship building in person. But obviously week to week, there's the operating rhythm of the business. There's the one-to-ones I have with leadership. There's the skip level reviews I have with the team. There's product sessions where we'll gather and coordinate go-to-market and product together. So it's not a kind of one and done a quarter. It's like an ongoing weekly rhythm that combines team meetings, listening, AMAs, various times of communication channels that just ensures that we're close to the field, close to the business, close to the pulse of the customer. Others is where we'll invite our customers directly. Had a fascinating meeting this week with a head of strategy for a large mining company. And actually, he's the perfect type of person to sit on what we'd call a client advisory board, connect him with product directly, share perspectives on what the customer's seeing, their challenges, how they use our product, what they'd like to see. And I think that direct connection from customer to product firsthand is another way of doing it. And then, of course, we've got technology like Gong, which completely changes the way not only we coach and develop our people, but also gives us a direct view every day into every conversations that's happening. So we can use Gong to gather insights, see trends, and we distill those weekly calls down to the top ones across every sector that goes to Jack, our founder and CEO, and all of our product team. There's various ways in which we're doing it, but I think it's an ongoing, continuous conversation.
You also talk a lot about culture, right? It's a bit annoying because, because everyone says it's about culture, but how do you account for it, right? How do you like quantify it? That's the part that starts to get a little iffy, right? Because it's not just like numbers. And especially with like the company, the way it's structured and your background. Like you guys are from the US, you're based in the UK, and then you're like have an Asia team. What is this culture thing? How do you kind of work through this whole culture aspect of team building? And like maybe if you observe some very clear differences across different teams, based on working culture, how do you kind of address that?
So I think of culture as the collective personality of your team, like who you are, but more importantly, like who you aspire to be. And so as I think about our culture, you say you can't measure it in numbers. I'd actually disagree. And so I think numbers are at the heart of your culture. How are you performing week over week, month over month? If you've got an engaged, aligned team that understand the mission of the business and why they're here and the value that we create. And you're really good at communicating and aligning and bringing to life customer voice and stories that keep people connected around how we help our customers succeed. I think that's your culture. And what you see is people that understand it, and you've hired well against it, and you develop people and you give them career pathing, good leadership, transparent. Now, we're not perfect, we have our challenges, but the aspiration is to build a culture that's aligned to the mission of the company. And we're a very ambitious, fast-growing startup that's getting real traction across a range of different industries. And so I think results are at the center of the culture. We want to be successful. We want to help our customers achieve results, ambition, focus. And I think when you start to codify that, you can recruit against it, you can develop against it, and it becomes a key part of just how you think about the day-to-day operation. Now, globalization, there's nuances, there's different cultures.
Before we go there, right? So just to be clear,
Sure.
essentially like culture is not like, like diversity, like, like, you know what I mean, right? Like there's like a wall with like, okay, these are our corporate culture that people just put it there. And then like, it's, sometimes you remember, most of the time you don't, and as organizations become bigger, you got like subcultures across the board. But what I'm hearing from you, it's not the same, right? So just kind of help me understand, like, how do you look at this whole thing?
Yeah. It's definitely not a statement on a wall. It's really into the business.
I'm very annoyed when I walk into an office and I see a statement. I was like, what is this? But anyway, I hope you don't have it. If I walk into the office, it was like ambition. I was like, oh, yeah. But yes.
For me, I feel like the culture is what you experience meeting someone from AlphaSense. And so I want our customers to meet people from AlphaSense who are passionate about the sector, understand the customer and their problems, are well-researched, are prepped, and can genuinely add value to that person in their context, in their role and their goals. And to a certain degree, I think that's culture. It's how it permeates externally, internally. And I think you cultivate it by role modeling it. I think about someone like Jack, our founder, a true visionary, but also incredibly hands-on with our customers, the pace in which he works, the way in which he's communicating and aligning us on the product vision and where we're going and why we're going there. He's a role model of our culture, an entrepreneurial, ambitious executive with a really clear kind of why for the role that AI can play and how investment professionals and strategy people think about their markets. So I think culture is about the role models you've got in the business, living it every single day. And it's about how you then instill that in the markets that you're going to, hiring against it, performance reviews against it, coaching against it. This is a really, really exciting business, and culture, I think, is at the heart of some of the results that we've had.
Okay, fair. And how you were at the part where you're trying to talk a little bit about like the different cultures, in because you're not hiring in silos, right?
Yeah.
You do have to contextualize it to the environment where your teams are.
Yeah.
So maybe you can give us some idea, across the board, how is it different? Yeah, for different teams.
What is inspiring about AlphaSense to a degree is that every office I go to, from London to New York to Singapore, there's a shared belief in the mission. We've really hired people that care about our sector. So it's built into our hiring profile.
Are you sure there's no tagline on the wall? Like,
come to our office
okay,
anytime, Reggie.
I'll visit because I got to see this for myself.
So I think it's like your hiring profile. And if you do that correctly, what I find, whether you're from Singapore, London, or New York, our people are curious, they're motivated, they are really excited about AI and the role it plays in market intelligence. And so to a certain degree, there's a lot of similarities in those. And then there's regional nuances and complexity that local leadership become key in. And so as I think about the people that I'm hiring to run a business like Singapore or to help build out our European business, leadership in the context that they have about who we are, how we recruit and build and want to run the business become key too, so that they can bring some of that nuance to life, understand the strategy and the mission of the company, but contextualize it in the local market that you're in the holidays that you celebrate, in the diversities of the territories that you've got, in the different international backgrounds that exist in Singapore. having people that can connect the dots on those things from New York HQ to a place like Asia, it becomes key.
It's true. Like even as my team grows, we had a meeting to talk about which holiday we will we will abide by, because people are all over the place and they have their own little culture where they are. And then there's like, the location or their racial group, their religion. So everybody has their own little thing. And then I think as a team grow, you do need to account for that diversity, right? For like a better way to put it. Yeah. So are there specific like working styles, differences that you could kind of highlight based on your observation in all these different teams?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say different working styles, but being incredibly mindful of time zone differences and the complexities that come with if you're running Singapore. But, there's going to be moments in time where AlphaSense as a global company from New York, still relatively early stage, we're always trying to be mindful of when we run meetings, how we disseminate information. But inevitably, there's times where we run a global all hands, and it's at like hours in the evening that for our Singapore colleagues we have to be kind of flexible to. And so I think those types of things as leaders, it's really important to be mindful of how do you communicate, how do you align when you're running meetings, what impact does it have on people that might be putting their children to bed in the evening, and like taking into account those types of things. And so flexible working, being mindful of those things, I think those are the things that become really important.
In our previous episode with your team, it's quite clear that EDBI is a very big investor with you guys. And their mission is, other than making sure the company grows, they want you to hire more Singaporeans. Right? And that's a big part of their mandate, right? So maybe give us an idea, like what are your expansion plans here? And then in your overall business strategy, like where does Singapore sit in this whole thing?
So first of all, we're
going to hire 100,000 people in the next 10 years.
I hope so. Look, we're really excited to be here. A lot of what drove our decision to be here is customer demand. And so we work with organizations globally, and we're just increasingly seeing people across this territory using and getting value from AlphaSense. And so as we thought about like where to be, Singapore offered us just a whole range of benefits, from the talent to the access to the broader geography, to our ability to be close to the customers we'd already established here. And so to a certain degree, the growth that we've had has just been incredible. As I say, we ended last year with 30 people. We're now up to 70. Some of the organizations we're now partnering with, there's just been really exciting momentum as we've got into the market. And you mentioned EDBI. They've just been a critical connector for us. One of the most hands-on kind of partner relationships that we've had. And a lot of that stems from their experience of the product themselves and the value that it creates for them. But because of that advocacy, they've connected us into some really exciting organizations. And so we recently launched a partnership with Singtel. Singtel looking to bring AI innovation to Singapore, really looked to identify some key AI innovators that they could partner up with, and we were one of them. And so we joined their big launch event in Singapore. Deputy Prime Minister of Singapore was there. And so we're just seeing traction across the board that gives me a lot of excitement around where we are. In terms of future growth, I hope lots more. A lot of it will depend on the continued success of the team.
Okay. So how do you then kind of define continued success, right? Because you're distributed in the sense that your teams are all over, right? So are you going to just look at success as a broad measurement across, I think you guys crossed your 400 million revenue mark, right?
Yeah.
So are you going to look at like overall the whole entity?
Yeah.
Or are you at the stage where you're already like kind of looking at like, okay, Singapore is accounting for Asia. You know where I'm going with this?
Exactly.
Yeah. So how do you look at that success?
Yeah, you're right. We've had a couple of exciting milestones. Just in the 2 years I've been here, we crossed 200 million. We made some acquisitions. We've crossed 400 million. And so the growth globally has been really exciting. But a lot of the highest growth is coming out of what we're doing here in Asia. And so
why do you think so?
I think there's an appetite in this market for really high quality data sets. And there's a lot of data, but it's fragmented, it's siloed, it's hard to find. And there's very few solutions that give you both data of the highest quality in one place, but also just like contextualize AI, purpose-built, thinks like an analyst, really designed to understand the context of an investment banker or how a corporate strategy person thinks. And so I think the value that we're creating in the quality of the data, the proprietary data that we have, the unique perspectives we're bringing to the market, whether it's private market coverage or public, I think there's a lot of appetite in this region for that. And particularly as you look at the macro right now, as the world becomes increasingly more uncertain, it's a challenging time for a lot of these people trying to navigate what do all of these changes mean to their business, to their supply chain, to their competitive landscape. And so I think all of those things combined give us a really exciting path to have great conversations with clients that want to stay up to date, informed, be efficient, productive. And I think AI solutions offer a lot of that for these companies.
Can you expand a little bit on this part where you're saying like, okay, AI solutions offer a lot of advantage, right? Which I kind of understand, but I want to hear from you, right? So especially with the backdrop where things are getting a little like wonky, right? Like wonky. And the whole world is going, through a lot of stuff, with the backdrop of competition and all that, right? So what do you mean by like AI? It's gonna like be even more important, from your point of view?
I would say organizations are under more pressure than possibly ever before. As the world and market shift at the pace that they are, the challenge to respond and be ahead of the curve and to be able to predict, if possible, all of the things that are happening and what these market movements mean to their supply chain, to the companies they invest in, to the products that they launch, to the investor questions that they might get. All of these things are happening at such a pace that companies are under pressure to respond, to have a point of view, to understand how these influences shape their strategy, what they're doing and why they're doing it. And so the promise of both really, really high quality data, there's a lot of it. It's fragmented, it's siloed, it's hard to triangulate around a key insight. And so one of the things that we're trying to do is bring all of that, different perspectives on the market, the expert, sell-side research, companies and what they're saying about themselves, news, regulatory. How do you bring that together in one place? The promise of AI is if you've got high quality data sets that you can trust and verify and get to the source information of an insight, the promise of AI and our AI is it's purpose trained to understand the context of market intelligence. And so I think the productivity opportunity and backdrop is how do you use these new technologies to spend less time on, do I have the right data, and more time on, how do I actually respond? And so I think that's a lot of what we're seeing right now.
Okay, great. So I hear you on that. Maybe can you give me a little bit of color? Like, are you trying to syndicate data here too? Because you guys were born in the US, but you're trying to localize to the your product market, which is in Asia, or at least a big part in Asia, right? So are you also kind of like syndicating for data here? Are you buying data sets here? Like, how are you thinking about that part?
Yeah, I think this part of the world is important to local companies, but global companies. And so every one of our customers across every industry is interested in different economies across Asia and what's happening. And so we have a huge interest in continuing to add local, high quality business data. And so whether it's the sell-side research we're now adding from TBS or Macquarie or HSBC, we're really building out our portfolio for all of our customers so that they can analyze and understand global trends. So that's a big part of what we're doing. And I think that continuous feedback loop is really where a lot of these new additions are being driven from, because our customers are telling us it's important.
Great. Okay. So maybe last question for the day, back to the talent discussion, is how you then going to compete for talent in Singapore, right? So Singapore is very expensive. I don't know if you feel so. Maybe coming from New York or London, it's not so expensive, but a lot of Singapore companies are looking at hiring regionally, right? Like they're trying to move operations regionally or even further. Yet you're doing so much more here, right? So like, how are you looking at that and how are you like competing for talent in a local context?
As I think about what we're doing right now, from our product and our story to the marketing that we're doing to the customers that we're winning and the case stories, I'm really proud of the momentum that's creating. We talked a little bit about culture. I think culture is one of those things that if you get it right, it starts to permeate externally too. And so what we're seeing across customer momentum, market momentum, I mentioned crossing 200 million, then 400 million. We acquired a business called Tegus that gives us a transcript library of 150,000 expert calls. And we're adding close to nearly 10,000 net new transcripts a month. And so that type of product market revenue momentum, coupled with the hires that we've made from the companies that they're coming from, like best in class talent from some of the top organizations in our space, we're just starting to see this kind of external brand developing, where 2 years ago, where I was setting up the Singapore entity, like a couple people in Singapore, it was hard to attract talent. No one knew who we were, the value that we created, what we were doing. And so getting interviews was actually quite challenging. If I fast forward to where we are today, I've got people falling over themselves in Singapore, in local markets, to outreach us and say, here's why I'm really, really excited to work at AlphaSense. So some of that is starting to happen. I think shows like this help. Thank you, Reggie.
I'm sure. After this goes out, probably more sign-ups.
But I think it's a continuous evolving thing. And as our business gets bigger, as our customer base evolves, as we start to see new geographies across Asia that become important, we're going to continuously have to build this playbook. But for now, a lot of really good things happening.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your time, and I wish you well.
Thank you very much.
If our audience would like to connect with you or your teams, for whatever purposes, is there a good place to connect with?
Yeah, absolutely. Find me on LinkedIn, drop me a note. Look forward to talking.
So LinkedIn is your favorite place?
It's a good place to be.
Great. I mean, you worked there previously, so it is what it is. So yeah, we hope you enjoyed today's episode. I'm sure there's a lot more to talk about in AI, in talent management, in team building, because it is changing everything, right? With technology evolving. So I hope more of you entrepreneurs get a little insight into how some of the leaders are thinking about this game. And going forward, if you have any other questions about teams, AI, and all that, put in the comment section. We may cover more in future topics. So yeah, meanwhile, thank you.
Thank you,
I
Reggie.
wish you well. He flew in, and do this. He's flying out now, Guy's busy. So yes, that's all for today. We'll see you next week. And this is all for the Business Show. Bye-bye.